You've got to keep there you go. You got to keep it up. So welcome everybody to the Sorcerer's Guide to Connecting with LinkedIn. Today we've got Jeff Webb on the call, so I'm not going to spend too much time doing a fancy intro, Jeff. I'm just going to pass it over to you. We've got a lot of great info to cover in the next 30 minutes, and as a quick reminder, yes, the session will be recorded. Yes, you will get the recording link and the presentation notes to everything today. So go ahead and, Jeff, take it away. If you guys have questions, go ahead and throw it in the Q&A box that's on your screen as well. So, Jeff, I'm going to stop rambling, and the show is yours.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks for having me here, and, of course, thanks to recruitingwebinars.com and Recruiting Blogs for having us here as well. So my name is Jeff Webb, and I am the CEO and founder of Radical Events. In fact, I'll just flip the screen here, but today we're going to be talking about connecting with LinkedIn. So we kind of put together this presentation with the idea of having about 20-25 minutes of me talking. And then we're going to answer, of course, some questions as well. And my understanding is Ryan's going to be watching those questions for us, so that at the end of the talk, we're going to be able to go over some questions, and I'll answer some questions as well. So today we're going to talk about connecting with LinkedIn. Of course, we all know why you would want to connect with LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is one of the world's largest business networks. Now, it's certainly not the largest social network out there. There are certainly larger ones in terms of, Twitter is obviously larger than LinkedIn, and of course Facebook is much larger than both Twitter and LinkedIn combined. Not a big deal. Today we're going to talk about LinkedIn because it's a very business savvy network, right? It's a place where candidates hang out, and it's also a place where it's really, really easy for us to source candidates or find candidates. So that's one of the reasons why you want to learn a little bit more how to connect with LinkedIn. But let me just do a brief introduction to myself. There I am, as I said, I'm the CEO and founder of Radical Events. You can contact information there, but if you want to contact me, it's gweb@radicalevents.ca, and that's my number. And then you can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And you can follow us on radicalevents.ca, where you can find out more about kind of our offerings. We do recruitment training, and today what I'm going to show you is actually an excerpts from our Blue Belt in Internet Recruitment course. So we do that with the folks over at Social Talent, Johnny Campbell, who I think will be, I believe, on future sort of recruiting webinars. So yeah, it's going to be lots of fun. We're going to talk a little bit more about connecting with LinkedIn. So here, a question is always gets asked to me is, Jeff, I'm doing Boolean, and I'm looking, how do I use Boolean effectively within the LinkedIn system to try and find candidates? My philosophy is that you actually want to use LinkedIn outside of the LinkedIn community, and so you want to use Google and Boolean within the Google system, the Google framework or the Google search engine to actually find candidates. That's probably your best bet. But if you are stuck on the fact that you need to be able to be within the LinkedIn system, what often gets asked is, does Boolean actually work within LinkedIn? So here we look at some advanced search best practices within the LinkedIn system. And yes, absolutely, Boolean modifiers actually work within an advanced search functionality. So what you're going to see here on the screen is some of the things that you can do that makes it very, very easy to search within LinkedIn itself. So what you would do is you would go to the advanced people search, and then what you'll see here is we actually have keywords or titles that we want to be able to see in our search. So keywords could be keyword 1, it could be Java or software developer or software programmer. The idea is that you may have a number of synonyms or reductions that you want to put into place when you're doing your search. And you can now do that because Boolean is supported within the LinkedIn Advanced Search. You can now do all of that searching within one search within the field, so that you don't have to continue to go back time and time again to actually create your searches. So the other thing that you can see here is that we have multiple titles. So we have Title 1 or Title 2 or less Title 3, less Title 4. The great thing about that is that we can search for many titles. So again, you may have synonyms of titles. You may have a controller or a CFO, but you maybe don't want to have anybody who's related to marketing. So you may say less marketing. You may not want to have anybody who's related to programming or technology. So you can say less technology, right? And then you may have And this company section is one of my favorites. So you may have actual companies that your clients or your internal clients have told you that they want you to recruit from. So you could actually put multiple companies' names in here. So, or you may have company synonyms. So for instance, Ernst & Young is one I often use because Ernst & Young could be called E&Y, Ernst & Young, or just Ernst. All those titles are used often in people's in terms of what companies people say they work for. And I talk very fast, so if I need to slow down, just let me know. And so you can use those in those areas as well. Or you can target many different companies. And you can use the full Boolean nomenclature. So you can use brackets or these quotes as well, just to be able to say, and quotes of course meaning in Boolean that they want to be able to see the exact phrase. Now often I'll also use a company reduction, because clearly we often don't want to see people who currently work for the company that our client is. Or potentially our own company, right? We don't want those people to show up on search. Or your hiring manager may say, I don't want to see people from XYZ company. You fill in the name. But so that's kind of that's where you want to use that reduction sign. So it makes it very, very easy for you in one in one search to actually build out your results in a way that is going to be very focused within the LinkedIn system, and where you're going to be able to find people quite easily, and with only using one search. Now, obviously there's always a downside to these things, and maybe this isn't a downside, but it makes it a bit more difficult when you're doing these searches. Obviously, you need to be very clear about what you're searching for, right? So we use a phrase all the time. And that phrase is, ask me to cut down a tree and I will spend 4 hours sharpening the axe. So, what we talk about a lot is we talk about the fact that you need to be very focused in certain terms of your research before you actually do this search, right? So you need to go back to your hiring manager and say, what are the companies that you're looking for? What are the companies that you don't want to see people from? What are some of the titles that this person could have? And then you maybe want to go to Wikipedia or LinkedIn or one of the other areas, and you want to be able to research all the synonyms for that title, and then you may want to reduce out some of the other titles that you don't want. As well as that same thing goes for the keyword, and keywords can be things in terms of technologies that you may want to use, synonyms for different kinds of technologies that you may or may not want to use. So that's kind of what you can do within the LinkedIn system internally to find candidates. Of course, this webinar itself is not going to be about advanced search outside of the Google system, but there is opportunity to learn about that as well. And then everybody always comes up with these private profiles, right? So, and they ask me, Jeff, what about private profiles? What do I do with private profiles? So I'm going to talk a little bit about a way that you can actually find these private profiles. So once you've found a private profile, what you want to do is you'll see that they have a private profile box here. You want to press this share button, right? You're going to share that candidate, somebody that you know. So it could be somebody that works within your company. Could be somebody who you just know. So if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, you can just start sending me connection requests, and I'll ignore them because I'll know that you're using this trick. And so then you share that person with your colleague or somebody who you know, and then you go back to your LinkedIn inbox. This is your LinkedIn inbox, right? And you check on, and then you go over to your sent items. And what you're going to see is you're going to see the last message that you sent. So that's going to be the sent message, this person's profile that you just sent to your friend or your colleague. You're going to open up that last message within your LinkedIn inbox, within that sent items area. And then and this is very critical. You want to open up the message, right? You don't want to open up the profile of the person that you just sent it to. You want to open up the message, which is going to be the little black box that actually says so-and-so just sent you a profile. So you open that, and at the bottom of that, you're going to see a box that says View Profile. As soon as you see that, LinkedIn is going to give you the full name and the full name of the person. So if they are outside of your network, or if they have marked themselves down as first name, last initial, because they want to be semi-private, this is a way to get around that within the LinkedIn system. system. And yes, it works 100% of the time. So LinkedIn is unable to close this down simply because it would be against their own terms of service down. And so it's a really easy way of finding people's private profile information within the system. And those are often people who are also 3 degrees or more outside of your network, right? So if you have a large network, so for instance, I don't know how large Ryan's is, but mine sits at about 7,000 or 8,000 people right now. So there's not a lot of the LinkedIn system that isn't available to me. However, I still every once in a while run across a private profile who's outside of my connections. And when that happens, I use this actual trick to actually find their full name. And it works really, really well. It works every single time, so I've never had it not work. Now, the only time that this will not work is if somebody has gone into the system and written in as their first name private and their last name profile. Believe me, I know it sounds silly, but it does happen. So people do often write down that their first name is private and their last name is profile. If that's the case, if you do this trick, you're not going to be able to find their first and last name because they've actually added their first and last name as being Mr. or Mrs. Private Profile. And there's not much we can do about that, right? That's just a candidate that you're not going to be able to find. But this works for 100% of the time for people who are just being hidden by the LinkedIn system because they want you. Well, I mean, there's 2 reasons why they hide them. The first reason, of course, being that they want to stick with their 3 degrees of separation. The second reason, of course, is because they will. What you'll see is if you go into the profile, you'll see a see full name. That will float here to the side sometimes. If you click on that, LinkedIn brings you to their various products that you can purchase, which will allow you to see the full name. So LinkedIn Recruiter might be one of them. And so they're trying to sell you something. So that's why they're trying to block off information from you because they want you to be able to buy their products so that you can see their network. You can bypass that by using this particular trick. Just making sure we're conscious of time here. So then the question is always, that comes up next is how do you contact these prospects? Do you use InMail? Do you send messages? Do you use the phone book? And what about email? Here's the reason why I'm not a big proponent of InMails. It's because candidate behavior is not like recruiter behavior, right? So most of us who are recruiters, we are online and on LinkedIn probably, if not full-time, then usually 2 or 3 times a day, maybe 4 or 5 times a week. We're on it a lot. We use the system a lot because we're trying to find candidates. Most candidates are not the same, right? Unless they're actually getting an InMail in their inbox from you, or they're just going back to check the system every once in a while, most candidates don't get onto LinkedIn more than kind of 2 or 3 times a month, which is not ideal. And believe me, I've proven this to be the case because I used to work for Intuit. I worked for Intuit probably 4 years ago, and I am still getting InMails today from candidates that I contacted 4 years ago asking me whether or not the jobs that I had sent to them were still open. And so what that shows me is that those candidates haven't checked their InMail probably for 3 years, which isn't ideal in terms of getting in touch with them, right? You don't want to wait 3 years for somebody to send back a response to you. Obviously, the phone book is very good. It's very fast. It's very efficient. And there is plenty of sources of information around phone numbers these days. In fact, the number 1 source of phone numbers available to us online right now is a very used site out there. It's maps.google.com or Google Maps. Most of the time, if you go into Google Maps and you know the city or around the geography that the company you're looking for is, you just type in their name and the city that they're in, or even the state that they're in, or the province. Once you get that information, you're going to be able to pinpoint their exact location. It usually is going to give you a phone number for the company. So there you've got their main line now. And if you wanted to, you could go to Google Street View and see what their offices look like, which has actually come in handy for me. When I've talked to candidates in the past, they've said, I would like to meet up with you. And what I typically say is, I see there's a Starbucks, like 30 feet around the corner from you. Why don't we meet up there? They're like, are you near my offices? Well, no, I'm looking at it on Google Maps. But, you don't tell them that. And then what about email? So email is a great way of getting in contact with people directly. And I even am a proponent of sending that email to, their work email as well. And then this question that comes up next always is, well, how exactly do I get to their work email? So this is a workaround that we put together. And I'm just going to move it around here so you can see it. But basically what you want to do is you want to Google the name of the company. And you know what? I'm actually going to show you how this works. I'm going to show you an example of Google Maps first, and then I'm going to show you an example of the domain search. So I'm just going to go out here. I'm going to go to Google. And hopefully this doesn't get rid of me, so tell me if I disappear, but hopefully this is fine.
And Jeff, as you're pulling this up, there are some questions, a lot of questions around they've breached the threshold of invites that they can send out. Can you discuss how the invites work and the volume of invites that you can send out, and then the cap on connections as well?
Yeah, so I mean, connection caps are usually around 5,000 people. So once I reached 5,000 people, I was not able to send out any more connections. People can still connect with you, though, and so that becomes a lot about how you're using your messaging, right? So, do you have a connect with me on LinkedIn on your email signature? Are you making it easy for your candidates to actually connect with you by sending you a connection request? You can receive as many connection requests as you want to, and in fact, most of the best connected people on here on the LinkedIn system are actually people who have been very good about messaging their networks to say, hey, make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn. So you want to provide people every opportunity that you can get to actually connect with you. Now, the other best practices is when you are sending out a connection request, if you ask the person to ignore it as opposed to saying that they don't know you, because if three to five people say they don't know you, then LinkedIn basically assumes you're a spammer, locks you out of the system. So when you're actually going to send out those messages, those connection requests, make sure that if you say to the person, if you don't want to connect with me, then just press ignore. Because that's going to save you from being flagged within the LinkedIn system about your, as being a spammer. Hopefully that answered the question. So let's look here on Google Maps, and again, all you really need to do. So let's say I want to do ADP in Toronto, and it's actually Google Maps does a really good job of trying to find places for you. But here's an office: it's 3250 Bloor Street West, Toronto, Ontario, and there's their phone number: 648925555. And again, if I really wanted to, I could click on here and I could say, show me the street view. It's usually under more. No, it's just being very slow. So here's the street view, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to be where the office is and what it looks like. So here the street view is coming up, and this is the ADP headquarters in Toronto. And so, I can do things like I can look across the street and I can look for coffee shops. Obviously, here's a pub next door to ADP. That might be a good place to meet with candidates. So Google Maps providing you with lots and lots of really cool information. But let's go back to Google itself. And I'm going to try and find an example here of a company that this is going to work with. So let's say that we want to try to find people working for XWave because they are a former employer of mine, so we'll pick on them. So I'm just going to put in an XWave Google search, and I'm just looking for their domain. So here I see that they're welcome to XWave, www.xwave.com. So I want to find their email addresses, though. So I do star.star, and star.star is basically a wildcard. It's a machine wildcard that says, give me everything, anything. It doesn't matter how it's styled. I want anything that shows up before the next sign, which is the @ sign, universal @ sign for email. And now I say xwave.com. Right? And so what ends up coming up here is we start to see some email addresses, right, in our body of our text, or our body searches. Not in the URL, not in the title, but certainly in the body of the searches. So Karen.Ewing at xwave.com, Tammy.Halt@xwave.com, doesn't really matter. What we're seeing, Doug.Rowe. So what we're seeing here is that the nomenclature for XWave is always first name dot last name at xwave.com, right? So now we know the person's email address because we've gotten their name out of LinkedIn. We've used the kind of the LinkedIn connection request the connection, we've used the little hack we've shown you to get their full name. So now we have their full name. Now we know that it's firstname.lastxwave.com. So it's a really, really easy and fast way to find out email addresses. And depending on how you're doing your sourcing, you may want to actually make a list of potential candidates and then sort that list in Excel by their employers. And if they have a common employer, then you can do your searches. And the other thing that we also like to use is something called Mail Tester. I'm going to just go over to mailtester.com. So again, I'll show you guys. So I found an address. It's karen.ewing@xwave.com. So let's say it's actually the person I want to get in touch with. So I just highlight that and I copy it. And I go over to Mail Tester and put it in there. Don't allow the spaces and make sure that this won't work. Then I press check address. And so what it's showing me is that this is probably a live domain. Now, you're almost always going to show up with a yellow bar here because most email servers do not allow for server address verification because that's something that spam bots do. But if you're getting mostly green with a little bit of yellow and no red in here, then chances are about 80% that you have a live address and a correct address. So you're good to go in terms of emailing that person. So let's go back to the presentation. So like I said, we went to mailtester.com. We checked for it works. And now I want to give you some best practices around crafting your message to the person. So, definitely you want to carefully craft your message. You want to make sure that is meaningful for the applicant. You do want to personalize it. Now, I've seen a lot of blog talk these days about personalizing it versus not personalizing your message in LinkedIn. I don't know about anybody else, but I can't stand getting email that says "Dear applicant" or "Dear business owner" or "Dear anything that isn't my name." I mean, seriously, if you want to reach out to me about a job or potentially using your product, please take the time to at least research my name and put it into an email. I just think it's rude not to. And also, if my name isn't in it, it's most likely just going to go straight into the trash folder. The other thing is, don't mention LinkedIn. So most recruiters will start off their email by saying, hey, I found a copy of your profile on LinkedIn. In fact, it's probably the most used phrase within recruitment right now. And so from a candidate point of view, candidates don't believe you anymore when you say you found their profile on LinkedIn, whether you did or not. So I just say leave that off, right? Actually, don't even mention where you found their profile because really where you found their profile isn't relevant to most candidates. What's relevant is the job that you're trying to talk to them about. And so delving into that discussion of where did you find my profile? Oh, I found it on LinkedIn. Well, how did you find it on LinkedIn? I thought it was blocked. Oh, well, I used a hack that Jeff showed me. Yeah, no candidate's really going to care, and it's going to start you onto a conversation that isn't going to be meaningful for that applicant, right? You want to make it short and to the point. So the worst applicant emails that I see are ones that start off by saying, hey, my name is Jeff, found you on LinkedIn. Very sorry to reach out to you in this way, and here's an entire job description for you to review and tell me whether or not you're qualified for the job. No. You want to create a message that isn't going to give the applicant at any point an opportunity to say no, right? So you don't want them to be able to say, oh, I don't want this job, or I'm not fit for this job, or I read the job description, or at least the first 3 lines and I didn't feel it was good for me, or I just don't have time to read this, so I'm going to trash it. So you want to make it short and to the point because it's allowing them to read it very quickly, and it's showing that you understand that they're busy people and that you understand that they need to get on with their lives, so you're going to make it short and to the point. Obviously, don't apologize. As soon as you start apologizing, it psychologically sets up the candidate to believe that you're doing something terribly, terribly wrong by reaching out to them to their email address, and it makes them angry because as soon as we pass that psychological wall, people have a tendency to become angry because that's just a reaction that they have. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to get them to the point where they're already angry reading your email. You want to choose a pull point. So that pull point could be any pull point within your company. Maybe it is your benefits. Maybe it's the fact that this is cool technology. Maybe it's, it could be a number of different things, but whatever your pull point is, you want to be able to, you want to work with your current candidate population or your current employee population to try and find out what that pull point actually is. So sit down with people who are doing the job right now and ask them, why do you love working here? Hopefully they answer with a really good answer. If not, you've got bigger problems. But hopefully you're able to find that pull point. And then you want to close with the call to action. And that call to action could be, send me a resume. It could be call me. Call me works very well because people will pick up the phone to call you. But it could be call me a resume or send me a resume and call me. Whatever the case may be, you want to make it short and sweet with a pull point and a call to action. You want to end with that call to action. But you also want to let them know that you are going to be following up with them so that if they don't write you back or they don't call you back, you will be following up after 3 to 5 days, and then you do actually have to follow up with them, right? You have to pick up the phone and say, hey, I sent you an email about this job. I didn't hear back from you. What's going on for you these days? Let me know. And that's very, very important, right? I think a lot of recruiters shoot off the email and they say they're going to call the applicant after a little while, and then they just don't because they don't get an email back, right? And that's just leaving kind of good talent on the table, and we definitely don't want to do that. And then obviously you're going to want to follow up again. Especially with executive positions, recruiting messaging can be very difficult and can happen over a long amount of time. I can remember some candidates who I basically, I touched base with every 2 weeks for 6 months before they ever said, hey, you know what, Jeff, I'm actually feeling a little bit kludgy in my job right now, and so I'd like to come in and talk to you guys. And in fact, we hired those people. So sometimes it does take time, but that message is definitely important. So that was all that I had to. So in conclusion, one of the things I want you to think about is, after today, I want you to sit down and make a list of yourself and stuff of what would make you respond to an email or a phone call from a recruiter, and definitely have that kind of in your back pocket, those thoughts in your back pocket as you craft your message. And one more thing, obviously, is that you can check us out at www.radicalevents.com. So I think we have a few more minutes before we're done. Are there any other questions that we want to get answered?
Yeah, actually, Jeff, there's a whole bunch of questions that are coming in.
Oh, goodness.
Regarding connecting on LinkedIn. And so I'll just kind of group them together. We'll take, a few questions and we'll have to call it quits for the day. Probably the biggest question is, how am I supposed to connect with people outside of my network when I can't see their full name? My company won't pay for the corporate account, and I don't have. And I guess what they're asking for is how they're going to connect on LinkedIn, and not necessarily by seeing which coffee house they can go to, etc.
Yeah, so I mean, the LinkedIn hack that we showed earlier on will allow you to connect with those people. So once you've opened up their full profile, you'll be able to automatically connect with those folks, unless you've been flagged into the LinkedIn system as a quote spammer. In which case you're going to have to reach out via the email address. Again, my philosophy is that I would always rather phone somebody or email them directly because I don't believe that they actually go to their LinkedIn system very often. And so, sometimes I'm a sourcer. I believe in doing things quickly, right? I believe in getting in contact with candidates quickly, and so I don't want to wait for them to go to LinkedIn. The other reason why you don't want to do that is because even if you send them an email, there are some email systems out there like Gmail. So Gmail is probably the most popular email system out there. Gmail will automatically spam filter emails coming from LinkedIn. I don't know why it does that. I don't know what Gmail was thinking when they got that set up, but basically they send everything from LinkedIn to spam. So if your applicant isn't aware of that, and most of us as recruiters aren't aware of that, then you're missing an opportunity to talk to them by messaging them within the LinkedIn system.
What are your thoughts on LinkedIn groups, connecting? There's a few questions on people that, I guess, own groups, and they are no longer able to export, which I know has been gone for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Exporting the list of members and the emails and all that stuff. So I guess there's some people on the call who have fairly large groups, and outside of wasting time is how they put it, I guess spending time. would be a better way to put that, trying to engage people in speaking and all of that, because clearly there's a time investment there and not all that much return for a lot of people. What's the best way to get people offline there and figure out who, I guess, search against your group to figure out who has what skill sets and things like that?
Yeah. So I mean, so I'm going to talk about messaging for a couple seconds within groups here. But for me, probably one of the least often used tools within groups, and this is, I'm showing you on my screen the Canadian Recruitment Community. It's a group that we run. It's got close to 4,000 recruiters that have joined. But for me, the one area that gets used the least in groups is this sentiment feature. So LinkedIn actually gives you the opportunity to send an announcement to your entire group, and except for the people who have said specifically they don't want to be contacted. But in our case, it turns out about 3,000 members, and we use this every week. So once a week, we send a group announcement out. Now, whether or not so those announcements, I don't think can be totally about, jobs, because people just won't read them, right? They have to have different aspects to them. So it could be things like, member profiles or post profiles, or shout-outs to different members, or shout-outs to different jobs within your job area. But this is a very, very, this doesn't get used a lot. It's one of the most unused or misused features within the LinkedIn group system. And it's a great opportunity, right? It's a great opportunity for you to talk to your entire group at least once a week. And you wouldn't believe the number of times I go to a recruiting event in Canada and have somebody walk up to me and say, "Oh my God, you're Jeff Webb. I get your emails once a week and I read them." The nice thing about this as well is that these group announcements go directly to their email address. It does not go to their in-mail address. It goes to their email address. So unless somebody has sent you to their spam folder because they've decided they don't want to hear from you once a week, and that does happen, at about 7 to 10% of the time that's going to happen. But if that hasn't been switched on, they're going to get your email. So this is a really good tool to message people.
Okay. I'll take a couple more. Looks like we've got some, I don't know if you want to get into, excuse me, upgraded packages for LinkedIn. There are several questions on the different packages on LinkedIn. Is it worth it? Is it worth the time? I know that's been an ongoing debate, and some people use it, some people don't. Might not be something you want to get into here. It's up to you between corporate recruiting, the recruiter account, and then just the basic user account where they can pay for it.
Yeah, I'm pretty clear about my feeling. I don't pay for LinkedIn. I would prefer people to pay for training. So we offer obviously training, but other people offer training as well that help you to search with LinkedIn with finding 100% of LinkedIn profiles on a 100% free account. Because LinkedIn is so heavily indexed by Google, there really should be no reason for a recruiter to ever need to buy LinkedIn Recruiter. So I'm not a big proponent of LinkedIn Recruiter, never have been. LinkedIn is well aware of my feelings themselves. So, my philosophy is don't invest in it, invest in actually training your recruiters on how to, how to search effectively within the LinkedIn system.
Okay. And let me see. I guess the last question, let's just take this as the last question. There's a couple on here as I pull them in around gathering phone numbers. So I guess you had briefly mentioned on, how to find phone numbers. Obviously, you can call the switchboard, et cetera, and do all that good stuff. But what tips and tricks can you give the people on the call today how to find legitimate phone numbers of people when you just have their profile or you just have a name and you're not comfortable calling into the company?
Yeah, well, I question the not comfortable calling into a company. I mean, I don't know how many recruiters out there who are going to be successful if they're uncomfortable calling into potentially a candidate. But I mean, if you're really uncomfortable, you can always do the after hours kind of phone tag, or what I call kind of the voicemail bingo game, and that is when you wait until 6 o'clock when the receptionist is gone. Usually there are automated systems of phone numbers, and often they have a name directory in them. And so if you get the person's name, often it's going to also give you their ID in terms of their what their extension is. Sometimes it's going to give you their direct number as well. of the days these days, though, most receptionists are no longer really great gatekeepers because all the names are out there. It's not that hard to get somebody's name within a company. And one of the tricks that I often used was I would actually, on purpose, not call the right person. So, you know, if I knew that I was looking for a controller, but I knew that John Smith was not the controller, I would call and I would ask for John Smith and, you know, give them his extension. And then I'd say, hey, John Smith, it's Jeff Webb calling. I understand you're the controller. What they would immediately say to me is, no, I'm not the controller, at which point I would say, oh, I'm very, very sorry about that. Could I ask you who is the controller? And they would tell me, and then I would say, okay, well, can you connect me to that person? Now, there's benefit to having John Smith, who's already working within the organization, connect you to the person you want to talk to. And one of those benefits is that on the controller's end, his or her phone is going to light up, and it's going to say that there's an incoming call from John Smith, who they know already works within the organization and is maybe a trusted colleague or at least somebody that they know works there, right? So they're far more likely to pick up that call because that John is actually transferring you to speak with the controller. Now, the other thing that I like to do is before I get transferred, I'll always say, hey, you know, if I miss you or if the line gets dropped, can you give me so-and-so's direct number so I can call them back? And again, most people are compliant, and like humans are compliant. We're compliant animals. And so, you know, from a psychological perspective, they're just going to give you the number because A, you've interrupted their time, B, they're not talking to the right person, and C, they're trying to be helpful. So that's a really good tip in terms of, you know, building out your numbers, your number searches.
Okay. Well, I think we're up against the time here, so let's go ahead and we'll call it a day. So for everybody on the call, thank you so much for joining today. Another great session. Thank you, Jeff, for the time. And everyone on the call today that registered will get the link back to the video recording once that's posted, as well as the Prezi that Jeff was showing today. So you'll have all those notes for download at recruitingwebinars.com, and we'll have that up probably in the next day or so. So be sure to check your emails, and we will make sure everybody gets that. Thanks a lot, everyone. Jeff, have a great day.
Thank you.